Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Katz, and hopefully, you all are doing well. Lots going on, of course. Every time I'm on here, there's new stuff happening. Today is gorgeous where I am. Um, yeah, it's nice and just the sun is shining and it's beautiful blue skies today with no chemtrails and what's really weird here where I live. Um, the last few nights we've had some thunderstorms, which is really like at the end of August, we normally don't get thunderstorms here in Panhandle of Idaho. So it's been really strange. It kind of reminded me of home back in Texas where we had those really they get really good thunderstorms, and so we've had like thunderstorms and lightning like the past 3, 4 nights. It's just been really out of the ordinary weather for us. So I don't know if anyone else has noticed that in their area, but normally for us it's either smoky because of fires, which we have not had this August, um, or cloudy, or it's been usually near 100, which it has been, but like we normally don't get the thunderstorms like this at night. So it's been very out of the ordinary. So I got my sage spray. I'm going to spray today. Spray. I have a video how to make this stuff. It just smells so good. Anyway, okay. So hopefully everyone is doing well. I just wanted to catch you up with what was going on with me. The last couple of videos, I was telling you all the overwhelming things that are hitting me all at once with everything with judicial uh, things. And then after all that happened, I had a day last week where our hot water heater went out. So we had to buy a new one. And then the septic tank that we're on, yeah, was full. So we had to have someone come and do that. So everything has been breaking down all around me all at once. The air conditioning went out. Thank God it only needed to be cleaned. Thank God it didn't completely go out. So I have just been, this week's been a lot better than last week, and I have some reprieve. But I'm telling you, things all around me have been breaking down. So I don't know how many of you have experienced weird things going on lately. Ugh, I'm just done with it. I'm ready to go home. All right. So today we're going to get into Alex Collier's number 163 webinar from August 12th of 2022. Today's August 25th. Hopefully I'll have some time to do his next one, which was August 19th. Have been working weird shifts during the week, so normally I have like a Monday and Tuesday off and I'm able to transcribe and do stuff, but lately I've been working Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, um, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to do this for you guys. So anyway, let's get into it. So Alex Collier's webinar from August 12th of 2022. Oh, and hopefully he did post on YouTube under his Alex Collier channel the Mount Shasta conference. There was one day that they recorded it, and it is on YouTube now. So if you haven't watched that, go and watch that too. He says, I hope all of you are well. He says, listen, the last thing you want to do is fret and get all stressed out. And he kind of laughs and he says, because everything is proceeding to plan. He says, it may not feel like it, but it is. It's going according to plan. He says, so we're going to cover a lot of ground today. He says, I'm going to make some recommendations of things for you to listen to from other presenters. He says, now, a lot of people don't do this, but I'm extremely comfortable doing this because this is not about me. This is about us. This is about humanity. This is about you guys, and we all need to be on the same page. So I don't have a problem recommending somebody else's work. And I don't either. I usually recommend, or I say, go watch like Quantum Truth's JCK, or Mark Atwood has a lot of good stuff, or there's several people that I watch that have, really good stuff. Yeah, several people. So I don't have a problem recommending anybody else. He says, especially when they can explain the position far better than I ever could. He says, so we're going to get to that. He says, I hope y'all are well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our little webinar. Says, now what in the world is going on? Says, for hundreds and hundreds of years, turn up my volume a little bit. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the deep state, the banking cabal, has remained in the background, very quiet, very surreptitiously moving and manipulating and controlling and eliminating obstacles to their end goal agenda, which is to control and ownership of gold, land, and our children. He says that's ultimately what they've been after all this time. He says they truly don't give a shit about humanity. That would be us. Hence, the 2030 project and the 2050 project. And the fact that every institution we have, from government to medical to justice, all of them are completely corrupt, and they literally work against the people. Of course they do. Says, but I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Says, but I'm just bringing some of this stuff up again because we always get some new people, and I have no idea where these things go. Says, back in 1998, when I did the ranch for the second time, he says, I shared a piece of information regarding the JFK assassination, and I asked them to shut off the camera because I was very, very concerned about my safety. And we had just had our second child, and things were really intense. He says things were really intense. A lot of scrutiny, surveillance, phone taps, yada, yada, yada. He says all those things that go with doing this kind of work. He says, so they turned off the camera, and I told the audience there, I don't know if those who were present remember this, if there's anybody on the webinar, basically. He says, I told them that one of the teams that was extremely instrumental in the assassination of JFK was the FBI. He says, so that sets the stage for where we're going today. He says, back in the 1920s, the entire Democratic platform was being run by the Ku Klux Klan, KKK. And it was shortly thereafter that it was decided that the Democratic Party, because it couldn't behave itself, because they were devout socialists and still are, that they decided that they needed protection. And at some point, they created the FBI. It says now the FBI has a lot of really good people in it. It says the CIA has a lot of really good people in it. DIA has a lot of good people in it. Many of the government institutions, many have good people in it. And what I mean by really good people is people who are fair-minded and people who are patriots. They love their country and they want to serve. This is now, what is it that all these institutions have in common? Well, they have a template. It says they all have the same template, and this template was put into place a very long time ago. And this template has several platforms that they've established within the different agencies. And this template, this platform goes all the way to the very top, or at least it did. He says to the top of the National Security Intelligence apparatus. He says now, for those of you who've followed me through the years, you know that I've shared information about John Kennedy's conversations with Dwight D. Eisenhower during the transition period from one presidency to another, and how they would go to the golf course and they would have conversations because there was no one out there to listen to their conversations. He says it was there where Eisenhower shared 47, the moral. Oh my gosh, I can't see. I can't read my writing. Sorry. Air Force Base, aka Edwards Air Force Base, and the goings on there. The Orions and the Special Operations Coordinating Group of the National Security Council. And now I've shared this, but I'm just going to touch on it again. We just have a lot to cover. It says the national security, he paused for a while, says special group is what it became known. Says is for all of the intelligence is collected for the executive branch, and that information is collected, collaborated, and then it's presented to the president in his daily briefings. And the president, trusting the apparatus, would take that information and he would make decisions. And the people in the national security apparatus would then come up with bills or come up with strategies or plans for the president to sign off on so they could be implemented. Now, this apparatus was and has been corrupted severely. It says, and I don't know if Truman knew about it, but President Eisenhower knew how corrupt this was, and he told Jack Kennedy all about this. So the first thing President Kennedy did when he was sworn in was dissolve a Special Operations Coordinated Group. He disbanded it. Interestingly enough, right after his assassination, the first thing Lyndon Johnson did when he came back to D.C. with Kennedy's body was to reintroduce Special Operations Coordinating Group, aka Special Group, which is probably still what it's known as today, Special Group. He says now Special Group, like all the other agencies, has a template and a platform, and that template and that platform is Senior Executive Services, S.E.S. Now, who owns S.E.S? He says, well, the British. He says what's also interesting is that S.E.S has been operating and managing our copyright office for decades and decades. Yep, still ruled by the British. Yeah. Senior Executive Services, that's your deep state. That's the apparatus. That is the tentacles of the octopus, is Senior Executive Services. This is why we have to clean out all these agencies, and I mean flush them, because they're all corrupt with this organization, so you're going to want to research that. It says now, this thing about Trump, there's a story going around that the president had a binder, and inside this binder, he had a list of all the FBI bad guys, all the programs that they ran, who in fact was running them, who participated in them, who was financed, operated by, hired, contractors, the whole 9 yards. And all the rotten programs they had been running, especially those that were run against him. He declassified those documents and that binder before he left D.C. Says now there's this rumor that the intelligence apparatus reclassified that binder and those documents, but never posted the fact that they reclassified those documents. So the president, his administration, and the National Archive people would not know that those documents had been reclassified top secret, etc., because they never posted the notice. Of course they didn't. They never let anybody know. Now that binder is said to be able to put all of these people in jail for the rest of their life. Some of them would be tried for treason and sedition. Now, he says, let's take this another step down the rabbit hole. It says under USC 18, section 2071, if the president or anyone is convicted of a specific felony, they can no longer run for office or any other type of service or classification. And that's why I gave you the law, so you can read it, he says. Now, it's interesting that this comes up, and it's coming up more and more. He says, I don't know if you remember, his name was Hoven Hutton Pulitzer, the guy who was very adamant about the stolen election and how he could read the ballots to know which ones were fakes and which ones were real. Well, he has been bringing this subject up and that they want to do this, so he can't run. So, okay. So they're basically saying they want to do this so that Trump can't run. And he says, and ladies and gentlemen, there's another issue here. There's another issue with this, and it's this. Where's the nuclear football? We know it's not with Biden. We know it's not with Nancy Pelosi because she's asked for it 3 times. Where is the nuclear football? Interesting, huh? People don't think about that. Now, we know for a fact that the Nuclear Strategic Command does not recognize the Biden administration as legitimate, which means they're in on the steal. They know the election was stolen. They would have had to seen the evidence. So the nuclear football is following who? And you already know the answer, says to that. If they can convict him of anything under USC 18-2071, then that football has to come back to the deep state. That is very, very serious leverage. Very serious leverage for them to have, he says, especially when they know they're cornered. They're absolutely cornered to have the codes and the ability to launch. Says now, we know Biden's on his way out. Says, I mean, the poor guy can't even put on a jacket or whatever it is. And Nancy's an alcoholic. Says, and just batshit crazy. Yes, she is. Or a clone. We know she's a clone right now. But she's next in line. He says Kamala Harris can't be president. She wasn't born American, and neither were either of her parents. She simply cannot be the president of the United States. So the next in line is Nancy Pelosi. And if that were to happen, she would probably bring in somebody to be VP. Now, would that be her nephew, the governor of California, Newsom? Or would it be one of her fellow cronies in Congress or the Senate? Who in the world would it be? But the deep state would have control of the nuclear football. Okay? Now that's who the deep state is, the Senior Executive Services et al. It says, you see, we all need a scorecard here because we don't understand the landscape. We don't know who the players are. The media will never give you any of this. And my hope is this is open. This will open up the conversation for everybody else to look into it. But if you're going to take down the deep state and their plan, and they're moving towards it, which is why you're seeing these desperate acts, it says if they have the nuclear football, that changes things a lot. And at the moment, they don't. It says so. They can't harm humanity or the earth because we know these guys will do anything. Anything. And if you need any further proof, you don't have to look any further than what's going on this planet with child trafficking, adrenochrome, organ harvesting. He says he calls this the tattoo. Facts. All of it. He says all of it. and the destruction of the global economy, the destruction of the dollar, which they're trying to force everyone into the WEF, which is World Economic Forum, reset where you will own nothing and be happy. No, about it. He says, so I want you to think about something. I'm planting this seed with you. I want you to look at the idea that if we did not have the internet, this is very interesting when he says this. So listen to this, okay, guys? He says, I want you to look at the idea that if we did not have the internet and all we had was the mainstream line media and we were in exactly the same position, how much would we know? How much would we know about anything? Like nothing, he says. It would be done. End of the world. It says those over 65 need to kill themselves or die for the betterment of the rest of humanity. He says the middle age, he says you have to give up your property, your rights, your liberties for the betterment of everybody. Basically, the elite. He says we would literally not only have to surrender our life, our faith, our religions, just about everything for the betterment of humanity. And then the calling of humanity would be for the betterment of those who survive or are allowed to survive. Those that have the proper bloodlines, those that have the proper breeding or genetics. I want you to look at the idea that this was foreseen and that the internet itself is a white hat operation. Totally, yes. It says now, they knew it would be corrupted to a point. That's to be a given. Knowing your antagonist, your nemesis here, your opponent. It says, but how else would they be able to share information globally in seconds? This was the only way. This was the only way. And if you think about McAfee and the recent news that he's alive in Texas, he's a big part of this. He is a white hat. He had the computer system to catch all of it. Okay. So he's helping. It says now, S.E.S, the deep state, the global cabal, they made sure that those who literally run most of these countries were kept in the dark about a lot of things, even things with their own country. And to do that, they made sure they all had plans or had plausible deniability, basically. He says they would have literally, under oath, they could say, well, I knew nothing about this, and that's true. This is true. This, he says, see, this was the issue with the National Security Council's Special Operations Coordinating Group. They were not telling Eisenhower anything. They were manufacturing intelligence in order to move the military-industrial complex into operations in other parts of the world for profit. It says not for a national security purpose whatsoever. They were doing the same thing with Jack Kennedy, but he disbanded it. The CIA is constructed exactly the same as Special Operations Coordinating Group. Now, like I said, there are a lot of good people in a terribly rotten system because of these templates that were created by Senior Executive Services. This is a foreign corporation managing the affairs of our government. Foreign corporation. This is just like the Federal Reserve, a foreign banking cartel running the economy of our country and loaning us money, a debt instrument with interest. It says they're loaning us a debt instrument with interest. And he laughs And he says, wrap your head around that for just a minute. So we were 3 sheets to the wind from the get-go. This is now, a lot of this information has been out for years, bits and pieces, but it would always be shattered or thrown away, or just the media would just take a broom and say conspiracy theories, conspiracy theorists. Well, to my fellow conspiracy theorists, well done. He says, we were fucking right. The day that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, the FBI Department of Justice was to turn over to a Senate committee everything on Hunter Biden's laptop. Everything. Documents, photographs, transcripts of everything. Guess what didn't happen? Because they did the raid. Says exactly. No show. They basically told our own elected representatives, go fuck yourself. He says, Abraham Lincoln once said, a nation divided cannot stand. Because I think for moving forward, we need to understand and not fear our government being dismantled, especially agencies being completely dismantled and are defunded so they collapse on their own. Because a foreign power owns these agencies. They own these agencies. Ever since, he says, and I'm going to use this and a couple of examples, the Department of Education, when it was created, trillions of dollars have been thrown at it up until today for educational purposes. Sadly, we went from being in the top 3 of the best educational systems in the world to being absolutely dead last. And in fact, Uganda has a better, higher rated education system than we do here in the United States. Uganda has a better educational system than we do. He says, what happened to the money? The foreign aid, trillions of dollars that were given to basically our enemies. He says, where'd that money go? Senator Joseph Kennedy of Louisiana said it best. I think our enemies should hate us for free. And he laughs and he says, we shouldn't be paying them. Okay? It says in India, all the doctors there, the entire medical system in India is and has been telling their people that the entire global wheat crop has been compromised and that you should not be eating any wheat, even if it's organic at all, because it's been compromised, either genetically modified or because of chemtrails. It says wheat, any wheat at this point will cause inflammations in your body, which will weaken your immune system, which is exactly what they wanted to do. It says, so this is in India. I thought you should know that. He says, the storm is here. He says, now there's a lot of chatter. Steve Bannon, Dave Bongino, and others are very, very concerned that once this FBI thing blows up in their face, which it will, that the deep state will have absolutely no recourse but to try and assassinate President Trump. He says, now, I'm sure the white hats know this. Now, when you create a clone, there's no guarantee that the clone will have the same exact eye color. And the thing about clones in any human being, every single fingerprint is different. So a clone does have the same fingerprint as the original. So a clone does have, he says. Now there's chatter that they want the deep state in its desperation. It's going to create a fake assassination of the president in order to get the patriots to react so that they can declare martial law and the Biden administration can ask the UN for troops. It says now, the issue is that half of all the UN military troops, or peacekeepers as they call them, are Chinese. So you know who would be coming into the country? He says, now I'm not telling you all of this for you to go into fear. Oh, I didn't know you were in here. I've got one of my black kittens in here. Hey, baby. Are you asleep? It's Binksy. Sweet. Says, I'm giving you the landscape. He says, and I want you to be aware of everything that's going on because I talk to a lot of people. I get emails from a lot of people that when they do research, they really sort of pigeonhole things, one specific area, and know nothing else about the whole field. My purpose for today is to give you the field. And I want everyone to see the field because what's happening here is holographic. It says it's third, fourth, and fifth density. It's holographic. So there's a lot of moving pieces, those we see and those we don't. There's a lot of intentions, those we recognize and those we don't. It says now, the deep state, the cabal, the families, and the hybrids, hybrid humans that are a part of the family that remain in the dark, they're freaking out because they don't have any backup, you see. Their off-world protection has been stripped of them. So they are now in a position they've never been in before. They're extremely vulnerable. In fact, none of them, whether it's family or hybrid, can dodge bullets. See? And this is what we're seeing, this movement of clamping down, this fascist movement motion towards suppression, towards control, towards fear, towards domination is their response to the fact that they're absolutely vulnerable for the first time in well over 1,000 years. Because they are. Because they are. The white hats, he says, and I'll address them in a minute here. He says the white hats, the boots on the ground and the others have their number. It says they definitely have their number. It says now, I haven't always agreed with the strategy of the end game, but I do have to admit, I do see the wisdom of it. He says, I do. The latest move by the FBI and the moves prior to, the clear contrast between being free and not being free, and talking about being free when you're not, is totally out there for everyone, and even for these liberals who hate Trump. You need to understand. You need to understand something, he says. If they can do this to him, they can do this to anybody. Okay, that means no one is safe. No one anywhere will be safe. You don't even have to do anything. If they don't like you, they can do whatever the hell they want, and to think they wouldn't bother you is foolish on your part. So humanity needs to come together. We need to come together and stop looking at life through a political lens. There is so much more to life than choosing sides. This is about humanity, us living together despite our differences. It says, now, I want to remind you that the tattoo was designed to begin the culling process of humanity. Culling process, he says. By 2030, they were looking for roughly half the population to be gone. By 2050, only 500 million left of chosen bloodlines. Do you understand? Do you understand what we're in here? It says this isn't a sci-fi movie. It's playing out like a sci-fi movie, but their intentions are real. They've put all this shit in motion to harm us. To harm us, and who did they go after first? They went after our children first. Now, if you can't get mad about that, then you're already a zombie. He says, because they don't care about your political persuasion, do they? Obviously, they don't. They could care less. They don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Socialist, you're unwanted. And these governments that we created, that we supported, have now completely turned on you and is now saying, we don't need you, we don't want you. And he says, I hope you're getting this because we're about to make a huge right turn. We're about to make a huge right turn. He says it twice, and you better buckle up for it because it's gonna be down and dirty. Sometimes to kill a monster, you have to become a monster. Yeah, because you get in their head. You live their lifestyle. You see what makes them tick. It's the same they did to humanity, right? So it was flipped. And we are doing it to them to find out who is doing this. It says you can do it, right? You can do it, right? But sometimes it requires being extremely lethal. So I'm not sugarcoating this for you. He says, I am not sugarcoating this for you because there is no sugarcoating this. He says, there is no fairy dust on this. He says, this is going to get down and dirty. And we, the people on this planet, need to be absolutely clear what this is about. There really is no more gray. With ourselves, maybe, he says, but with the players, the global players playing this game, using humanity as the pawns, there's no gray area whatsoever. The black hats want us gone. The white hats are going to protect humanity no matter what it takes. They're not discriminating. The black hats, they've discriminated against everybody, whether you are a liberal, woke, trans, they don't give a shit. He says they want everybody gone. They're just using you. He says that's all they're doing. They're just using you. I have talked over the years about being present and how important it is. I've talked about authenticity and how important it is. I've asked about going within and voluntarily introspection and knowing what you want. And frankly, I'm not sure I've done a good enough job at all. But I want to share something with you. There was a video that I saw where this young woman just lays it out, and it was stellar. Her presentation on this is stellar, and it's on YouTube. It's called A Powerful Conversation About Our Current Transformation on the Planet. It's by Lori Ladd. It's stellar. She says it. She says she just lays it out there so well. And you know, one of the big differences between men and women is that what men think, women feel. And because we are moving back into the feminine principle and balance between the male and female, I thought Miss Ladd's presentation was just stellar, which is why I'm sharing it with you, because this is about all of us. This is about all of us, he says, and none of us has all the answers. We all have perspective. He says, we're all involved, we're all engaged, even the knuckleheads, and whatever the outcome of this is, he says, which I believe is going to be wholeness. Says we're all here for a reason. You know, I joke about my contract, he says, and not reading the fine print. And you know, I must have been on Romulan ale. I joke about that. The fact is, I don't drink, and it's amazing how many rumors there are. I don't drink at all. He says, I don't smoke. I don't do any of that stuff. But sometimes I just like to be a clown. He says, I like to take very serious things and express them in a very humorous way because I still have a sense of humor. He says, and not everybody appreciates it, but I still have a good sense of humor. It's what keeps me sane and grounded. But what's coming, we all need to have in perspective. And what I mean by that is we need to see this change as something extremely positive. And it is. It is. It's real serious movement. Will they try to arrest Trump? He says, I don't know. Would they really be that stupid? Probably. Will they be arresting the real Trump or a clone? I don't know. He says, should they wheel out one of the clones? Probably. And he laughs. Says, but this is the turn. This is where things start to really, the house cleaning is literally right in front of us. Says days, a week, maybe two. It's all right in front of us. And yes, we've been watching a movie. Yes, there's been a lot of things being orchestrated because the white hats have. They've all taken the oath to uphold and defend and to protect. Every soldier has done the same thing. Every law enforcement agent has done the same thing. Now, yeah, you're going to have your assholes, he says. But on a whole, they're all really good, decent people. They live amongst us. Their children go to school with ours. They're going to do the right thing. But they gotta kill the monster. They have to take out the monsters. And no matter what the goddamn media tells you, ladies and gentlemen, pedophiles, human traffickers, those who steal children for organ harvesting, they're fucking monsters. Yes, they are monsters. They need to be removed from the equation. Absolutely removed from the equation. And I don't care if you like what I just said or not. He says, this is the reality. They are beyond. He says they are beyond because they don't feel compassion. They have no compassion. They have no empathy. He says they're fucking robots. He says they're animals in a human body. In fact, the soul inhabiting these bodies may not be us at all, but something else. He says, but something else, which is why they do what they do indiscriminately. Yes. It says, on the Indian and Chinese border, please understand that what you're dealing with is the Indian government and the Indian people are going to defend their country and their sovereignty from the CCP, from the CCP, not the Chinese people. The Chinese people are not the issue. The CCP is. They are the Chinese version of the Nazis. Maybe worse. I don't know. Very powerful, he says, and they're mostly funded by the drug trafficking, fentanyl, everything else, and human trafficking. And I think I've told you guys before, I've been on fentanyl because of my pain issues. I have those suckers, the fentanyl suckers. It's the devil. It is the patches. It's the devil. It's horrible. It's horrible. I'm so glad I got off of that because it was not a good thing, and it will make you lose your mind. You will forget everything. It's bad shit. As the Russians are going to set the world on fire by telling the truth about what's been going on in the Ukraine and in other places in Europe, involving the creation of biological weapons by elements within the U.S. military, industrial military complex, or S.E.S, to harm humanity. They're also going to discuss that the DNC, which has stolen up to trillions of dollars, at least up to $1 trillion, of money over many, many years and several administrations, and has laundered that money through the Ukraine to foreign bank accounts and then back into the United States to fund the stealing of elections. They have the information. He says, now, of course, they want to say, hate Russia, hate Russia, hate Russia. I would like to remind all of you that if it weren't for the Russians, we would have lost the Civil War. The North would have lost the Civil War. One of those things that's been written out of American history is that the English were going to invade the North during the Civil War, and it was Russian ships, warships, that stood between our coast and the British Navy. Okay. Oh, yeah, he says. Oh, yeah. That's why the British and the Russians have this long-standing issue. Not the British people, but the crown. The banks, the English banks, they've done terrible, terrible things to other countries. They've raped and pillaged when S.E.S. came into the United States, and they grounded themselves into our agencies and into our government. We began to emulate the old British Empire, and our governments and our military have done terrible, terrible things, masked in patriotism. We're going to have to look at that, he says, and he says it twice. We're going to have to look at that, and it's going to be a very tough pill to swallow, but it's coming. It's all coming, you see. This is all part of disclosure. There's good and there's bad and really ugly, dark stuff, and we have to be in the moment with it. He says we do. We just gotta own it, because, ladies and gentlemen, we the people abdicated management of our government to corrupt politicians, to corrupt banking system, to a foreign banking system and other foreign powers that have been embedded in our everyday life without our knowledge. But you know, he says, but when we did have knowledge, we didn't do enough to stop it. For example, we knew the CIA was trafficking drugs in Southeast Asia. What did we do about it? Why does the agency still exist? Why is the agency still involved in drug trafficking? It says we knew they were bringing cocaine from South America into Marietta Airport in Arkansas. We knew the Clintons were involved and were able to cash in. Why is the agency still in existence? He says, see, we have to be involved. We have to be involved going forward on a local level, on a state level. The power of this country going forward, when all this shit is taken down, he says, that void, that vacuum that's going to be created when the federal government is dismantled is going to be at a state level. That's where the power's going to go back to. It says, ladies and gentlemen, that means we have to be involved wherever you are, and this is going to happen in other countries. It says, Iraq doesn't have a government right now. They're having to put a new one together. That means the people have to step up. The Japanese government just walked off. They've resigned in its entirety. That means the Japanese people have got to step forward and fill that void, or it's going to be filled for them by the cabal, and they're going to continue what they've always done. Rob everybody blind and then blame them when the shit hits the fan, because they've robbed everybody blind. You see, he says, they have a hole inside of them that can never be filled, ever, because they're empty. They have no empathy. They have no compassion whatsoever. Whatever souls attached to these bodies, they don't feel anything. Hey, Amber. Where's your brother? He went somewhere. They don't feel anything. Says, so tolerance and understanding will never affect them, ever. Okay? Now, I felt it was necessary to share all of that. You know, everything is not all wine and roses. Everything doesn't smell sweet. There's definitely some outhouses we have to pass, and we're going to walk by, and we're going to see on this next part of the journey. I also wanted you to understand the political thing. is a white hat op that he says, my God, is just absolutely brilliant. It really is brilliant, he says. The way this is all playing out and all coming together, and how they've been able to get the deep state to literally jump into a hole of their own digging. Says it's really quite remarkable. But the shit's gonna hit the fan, and it's gonna get really, really interesting. He says it twice. Really, really interesting. And the media, of course, is going to scare you to death because they're all deep state. They're all compromised, and they want you to be in fear so that you surrender your rights and your values to them. They're going to want you to give them your power, which is the only way they can survive, because they can't do anything, right? It says they haven't done anything right. They haven't. When the whole thing is disclosed, you're going to realize they're demolition experts. That's all they are demolition experts. They can't fucking build anything. All they can do is take it apart, says, and rob everybody blind. That's all they do. Even when they build a structure, they do it with the intention of robbing you blind, aka the fiat currency system. It was all designed to put everybody in debt and then rob you of all your property and your wealth, the real wealth. He says gold, precious metals, land, and your children. He says, now, I want you to hear this. We are going to be okay, but you needed the scorecard. I felt like we needed to update the scorecard, so you would understand where we're at and what's going on and what all the players are. He says, Field McConnell years ago did a very good expose on S.E.S, Senior Executive Services. Now, there may be others who've done this recently, but maybe more up to date. But I do remember Field McConnell talking about this situation before the deep state tried shutting him down for other issues. And when you come up against the beast, you run the risk of being singled out and being targeted. It says here, in the next 2 weeks, whoever has not woken up, love them from a distance. Just bless them. Just bless them and let it go. It's time to not only focus on the lions, and in order to help wake up the other lions, you have to be awakened lion yourself, or lioness. That's where we have to be right now. And if you can, do what you can to protect those who are still asleep. Maybe a few extra cans of food. He says, now, the food chain is broken. There are big time issues. Food banks all across the country, here in America, are shutting down because there's no food. That never happened here, ever. Where's your daughters? Says, so you have to pay attention. You have to be sure your pantry's full, and that if you can, maybe at least 3 months of pasta, canned goods, the basics. I have no idea what's going to happen with fuel. We're not really getting any fuel imported in the United States because no one wants our dollar. So I'm operating under the presumption that what we're burning in our cars right now is from our strategic supply, which runs out in February next year, 2023. Okay? It runs out in February, and this was all done by design. It was all done by design 6-7 years ago. When we first started the webinars, I told you then that the deep state was throwing everything against the wall because they realized they were losing ground. They panicked, and they're still panicking. They're putting all these things in motion, okay, to bring about the New World Order. It says, I talked about the New World Order 30 years ago. He said, and all I got was, Collier, you're nuts. He says, you don't know what you're talking about. He's like, okay. Yeah, sure. I wasn't the only one says there were many others talking about it. David Icke, he says, in fact, David has put out a new video, a new conversation he's had with someone about current topics, which I thought was very, very good. He's always on point, and he has been for 30 plus years. He says, and we all have our lanes. He says, we all have our places where we know what we're talking about because of our experiences, because of our knowledge, and because of what's shared that comes down the pipes from spirit, from other dimensions. He says, the bottom line is we're all in this together. And for me, this is not a business. I just want you guys to be safe. I want you to be aware, and I want you to have the knowledge wherever that knowledge is. I will share it with you, and I have for years, because it's important to me, because I have kids, I have nieces and nephews. What we do today, all the things that are being done today, is for the future generations to continue to live free. Hello, Binksy. You want to say hi? Come here. Say hi. This is Binksy. Zachary Binks. Oh. He's so Binksy. He likes to talk, but he's awfully quiet today. Aren't you, Binks? You want to go outside? Yeah, go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. He says, if we don't do this, if we don't battle these dragons, if we don't take out these monsters, come 2050, we have no offspring here. If it's up to these assholes, he says, we have no offspring here. We basically have no humanity here. Reminds me of, if you've ever seen Childhood's End by author C. Clarke. He has a book. Sci-Fi Channel did a mini series, Childhood's End. I should do a video about it. It's very interesting. It says, because they will genetically modify the 500 million that are left. They will genetically modify them. They won't be Homo sapiens sapiens either. They'll be something else. It says, we will cease to exist. If we don't take our stand, back up the white hats, do what's right, defend each other. In defending each other, we will remain free. That has to be here. Russia, China, India, Brazil, it doesn't matter where it is, we've got to defend each other. We know who the enemy is now. In your governments, you literally give them an ultimatum. You're either on our side, or you're going to jail, or you're going to be tried for treason, for crimes against humanity. Pick a side right now, it says. We're still the power. We're still the majority. We still pay the bills. We still do all the work. We provide the food, the services, the manufacturing. They're not doing squat. All they're doing is sitting around taking crap and eliminating all of your civil liberties and rights and putting you into poverty. Why would you continue to tolerate that? Right? This was an old school talk today. He says, I know we're further down the road from that, but God, he says, I want everybody to wake up. I do. The numbers of children that are crossing over from complications of the jab is fucking staggering, ladies and gentlemen. It is staggering. In fact, the hospitals are sending the bodies directly to crematoriums because they want to hide the numbers. The British government has admitted that 1 out of every 246 people who got the tattoo have died in the first 60 days. He says, for an island, that's a staggering number. That's just from the tattoo. He says the numbers are much higher after that. Unbelievable. It says, plus the other physical complications. It says, and they mandated this shit. It says, they made you take it. They threatened you if you didn't take it. Now, for those who are traveling internationally, it's my understanding that if you can get a doctor's exemption based on the ingredients in the tattoos, that will suffice to get you into countries that still have these restrictions. I know some that have already done this. It says they have the exemption. I don't have any more details than that. Maybe on Nights of Terra or other chats you can ask those questions and the answers and the information will be shared. It says, what's going to happen with Taiwan and China? China's probably going to go into Taiwan, or I should say the CCP, because they realize that they're screwed. The Chinese economy is collapsing. The real estate market's done. He says they're running out of money. So what do? Like rats, they scurry to steal someone else's stuff because they have none of their own, because they're illegitimate, and says they never built anything except tyranny. Says, well, that's not a real thing. That's a mindset, okay? That's a mindset. You create tyranny by establishing fear in the minds of others. So they imprison, oh my God, imprison themselves. But it's not real. The minute people change their mind about being afraid, the tyranny collapses. So they have to go and steal someone else's shit. Says, okay, I hope this is helpful. You know, I don't always know what to share. On a humorous note, and then he says, on a humorous note, Elon Musk has offered to buy the FBI for $100 billion, and we're waiting to see if the Clintons will sell it. He laughs. Says, it's supposed to be humor, but you have to wonder today. He says, you really do have to wonder. He says, I guess, okay, do we have some questions? Just a few? Okay. So that was the main part of it, and now we're going to get into some questions. Question 1, like I said, and I don't write down all the questions because a lot of them are like repetitious and he's answered things before, or it's just something that doesn't really have any relevance, basically. So first question, you created a vision of the new world that we are moving into. You said we would live much longer and have lots of time for a bucket list of projects. How will this come about? And his answer was, well, it's going to come about in many ways. The first and foremost is that each one of us is going to change how we think about aging. Now look at the idea that we measure our aging by our rotation around the sun. We count the years and say, well, 65, we're old, we need to retire. Says, that's the system, and that when we become vintage, that we're really of no use. In fact, the system that we live in tells us that we're no longer producing, that we really don't have any more value, and that we're actually a bother on the system because we're elderly. And it's all just based on age. It has nothing to do with our knowledge, our wisdom, or anything associated with that, or our ability to teach. It's just that the system, if we're not generating revenue, we're of no value. It says that's one. Number 2, you're going to be very surprised to understand that when it comes to aging, our off-world cousins think about it in a very different way. It says they consider a year or an annual renewal every time the body regenerates every new cell in the body. For some, that's 7 years. I don't know how many of you have heard, but it's been out there, like every 7 years your body changes. So it's true. So why is that not taught to us? Off-worlders know it. Every 7 years you change, your cells change. Okay.
He says, so their approach towards aging is extremely different. And it all starts here, he says, because what you focus on, you create. What you project is what you get back. It says, now, there's the food source. It says, isn't it interesting that all the processed food plants have been burning to the fucking ground? It says, well, why is that? It's because they've been poisoning the food chain. They literally have been poisoning the food chain. It says if you really read the ingredients and looked up what those things were, you would not eat half the things that we buy in the grocery store. But we do it because it's easy, it's convenient, and because the kids will eat it. And that's no longer an excuse, he says. Another reason is the pharmaceutical industry. It says, name one pharmaceutical place, anything that has cured a single disease. So there isn't one. There's not one thing you can point to that has cured a disease. Of course not. It's all about money. It says it masks the symptoms, but it creates other problems in your body. It may suppress one thing, and then it brings up 3 other issues in your body. And then you got to take drugs for that. And then the whole time says color, light, and sound, which have been known for thousands of years to cure the body, is outlawed. Of course. Naturopathic medicines, which have been used for thousands of years, is called quackery, quack science. He says not given any legitimacy, and doctors have actually gone to jail for using these things to cure diseases. This information is publicly available. He says it bothers me that whoever asked this question, that you yourself don't know this is possible. He says maybe you do. Maybe you just asked this question so I would share this information. I hope that's what it is. And then, of course, we're hearing about quantum technology, which again is color, light, and sound. That's all it is. These things work. They just programmed us and convinced us that it's rubbish. It says, and that's because they can't make money from it. They can't impoverish you with medical debt. They can't own you, and that's all they fucking want is to own humanity because they're insane. Because they're insane. Yeah, medical debt. How many people have gone into medical debt in this country? It's insane. Okay. When my husband had a car accident in our early 20s, he could have died. At that time, it was in the early 90s. And the bill we got from the hospital, he was there 2 weeks, week and a half. Okay. $100,000. $100,000. We had to file bankruptcy. Yeah, we filed bankruptcy because there was no way we could have ever paid that back. And then now, of course, you pay how much out of your paycheck for medical insurance. But then, even though you pay that amount out of medical insurance, when you go to the doctor, you have a copayment. They write you a prescription. That's more money. Any kind of test that you take, blood tests, urine tests, x-rays, MRIs, anything extra like that, they only cover a small percentage. So you're paying literally thousands and thousands of dollars, at least here in the United States. I don't know what it is like in other countries, but here in the United States, you will go into medical debt if you have any kind of issues, which pretty much everybody has issues from all this shit. It drives me crazy. Next question. Hi, Alex. Anything on 87,000 armed IRS agents? And he says, oh, yes. He says, yes. He says, there's already 78,000. So if they were to hire another 87,000, they would have more active military than the United Kingdom and more active military than the state of Israel or the country of Israel. And sniper school. He says the IRS is going to have its own sniper school. He says, ladies and gentlemen, the IRS is a Puerto Rican corporation. Says, I talked about this 30 years ago and they came after me like you couldn't fucking believe. He says, oh my God. Says, they nearly destroyed my life. He says, it's a Puerto Rican company, an LOC, that is owned by the Federal Reserve. Says, now they couldn't actually make it legal because the Constitution says there's no direct income tax. So what they had to do is create Department of the Treasury. That is not the U.S. Treasury. It's the Department of the Treasury, where ATF is, Bureau of Firearms and Tobacco, and other organizations. They are private corporations. Private corporations pretending to be federal agencies. So the Department of the Treasury is not the U.S. Treasury, and it's all Fed. It's all Federal Reserve. So what the deep staters are doing is they're moving ahead with their New World Order. They're continuing the path that they created in the hopes that something happens and the white hats lose, or they surrender, or they give up because they have no choice. They're going to follow through with their plan because they can't surrender, because they're all going to jail or being executed for treason, or they're going to be hunted down by the people for the crimes they've already done when it becomes public knowledge. What's that Q saying? They won't be able to walk down the street? So they're going to go forward with this, but for anyone out here that wants to become a new IRS agent, you have to be willing to use lethal force, and you will be carrying a weapon, and you will have to go to sniper school. So he says that takes a tax audit to a whole new level. That takes IRS collections to a whole new level. Sniper schools. He shakes his head. He says, we really simply can't allow this to happen. We just can't. And that's how serious they are about their New World Order, about their enslaving humanity. So we, the people, simply cannot tolerate this. Not for a minute. Not for a minute. We all need to stop paying taxes. We really do. We need to stop. But the problem is that people are so fearful for this crap that like people are still going to do it. They're never going to stop doing it because they're so fearful. But if every single one of us stopped paying taxes, maybe they wouldn't exist. Next question. I'm wondering if you've heard about the current situation in Australia. Alex says, actually, he says, Bossy just did an interview 2 days ago. I don't think it's been 48 hours old. And he said during this interview, he says that when the United States makes its turn, in other words, when the white hats make their move, it will happen in Australia. He says, you see, for whatever reason, the United States and Australia were connected by some kind of umbilical cord. And there's a lot of white hats in Australia, he says. But there's a lot of things I don't know. He says, I don't know at all. I don't know anybody who knows it all. And as well informed as Bossy is, I can't remember his first name. And then he says, oh, Ricardo Bossy, that's it. Thank you in the chat. Thank you, Jacqueline. I'm sure he knows, but he can only say so much because this is war. It says this is a war of attrition and no one is showing their hand. It says there's moves, counter moves, moves and counter moves. Okay? It says this is holographic chess, a real life chess game, and we're down to the last moves. We absolutely are. And I think Australia is in a very similar place as the United States, militarily, intelligence-wise, with white hats versus black hats. He says, I think we're in exactly the same place. In fact, we're probably mirrors for each other, he says. He says, but you guys in Australia are going to be okay. You are. He says, I would so love to see Australia before I can't. Says, I've heard so many remarkable things about it, and I love the Australian people. You guys are so amazing. As much as I love Americans, he says, all people around the world, we really are great people, great human beings. You have your jerks. We definitely all have our jerks. But on a whole, we're really remarkable beings that in the end will always do the right thing. It's a shame that we find ourselves in this place, but I don't think we'll find ourselves in this place ever again like this, because a lot of technology, a lot of programming, and thousands of years were needed to bring us to this place, and it isn't going to happen again. What did I say in my past videos when they talk about just the 1,000 years of peace? No, this is why this time is so special. He just said it. He just validated that. It will never happen again. That's why they're all here helping, okay? It's break the wheel time. We're not going around and revolving, we're evolving. So it's time to break the wheel. This will never happen again. So anyways, that's what Ricardo Bossi has said, that when the United States makes its move, it'll happen in Australia at exactly the same time. So there's a synchronicity, all right? We're obviously talking to each other. The white hats in both countries clearly talking to each other. Okay, next question. And this is personal for me. Many car accidents that are being strange and quietly that are quite violent are being reported. So basically, they're asking about these car accidents everyone's getting into lately. I've heard rumors of MK Ultra and other mind control individuals being activated. Is there substance to this, or is it vax related? And I told you, my dear friend, she's only 36, had a very serious car accident right after Easter, and she was fully vaxxed, and she was, I guess, driving home, had a major car accident. She didn't die. Her dog died. That was in the car with her, but she has very serious brain damage. She had a stroke and lost control and had a really bad car accident. And yeah, so she's getting therapy of learning to walk, learning to talk again. Yeah, so all happened because of the tattoo, right? Alex says, my personal opinion is the percentage of those being activated by Project Monarch or other programs like that is probably a small percentage. He says, I think what's happening is probably more tattoo related. I think people are having brain aneurysms, strokes, because you have to understand those who have had the mRNA, you have a foreign entity growing inside their bodies, all right? A synthetic aluminum creature growing inside their bodies, and it's killing everyone. It's just a matter of when does it happen. But they're having strokes and seizures, and if you're driving a car and you have a seizure, that's not good. Says that is so not good, and I believe a majority of those are exactly that. You know, the insurance companies know. They're denying claims now because they know what's coming. They realize what's happened. They didn't give anybody warnings not to do this. They played the game as well. They did. They didn't warn people. They played the game, and there's going to be some fallback on them because of that. Says, just like the medical community, there were doctors and nurses who knew, the pharmaceuticals knew, there's going to be some fallout. major fallout against all of these institutions and groups of people because they knew and they didn't say anything because they went along to get along and because of the money. They did it for the money. You do not want those people anywhere near the healthcare system when it's all dollars and cents. When their first emotion is not compassion and empathy, but how much can I make? You want to get as far away from them as possible, as far away as you can. Yeah, I hope. I hope she does get cured. I hope she does get better, and I hope that when med beds come around, hopefully she can get cured. And I hope to God she can sue the crap out of him. I hope she gets some money from that because that's crap. Unbelievable. Next question. Recently, rumors have surfaced that there's a high probability that Trump may be arrested by the deep state following the recent FBI raid done to his Mar-a-Lago estate, and that his arrest would signify the part of the storm where the shit hits the fan. Could you offer your thoughts on this? And Alex says, I've heard that as well, and I remember the Q notes stating that the president or POTUS would be well insulated. If you were going to be well insulated, you'd take him to Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. It says there's no way to get him there. Not by anybody, deep state. I keep saying maybe he's going to be up there in Space Force. I think he'd be more protected there. I don't know, like than underground. Who knows? It says, will they arrest a clone? Again, I addressed that in the beginning. I'm not sure. Personally, I think we're already in the storm. He says they've done something that's absolutely unprecedented and that has shocked every other government around the world. Even Russia was uncomfortable with this, with the raid. He says, I mean, they even have a pretty ruthless past, but even now, they were very concerned with this turn because it means no one's safe. Absolutely no one. This platform has to be taken down. There is no salvaging any part of it, and the head of the snake has to be cut off first. Because if you cut off the head of the snake, then the snake just wiggles. It doesn't know what to do. It can't make a decision for itself, and it will eventually die and collapse on itself. So, and since with the white hat, since the Kennedy assassination, to know all the bad organizations, all the bad actors, all the bad family lineages, all the corruption, and because of Hunter Biden's laptop, they now know how to trace the money. And he laughs and he says, thank you, Hunter. They know how to trace all the dark money. They're really pretty much ready to go. He says they really are. So now it's just execution. And like I said, these are event-based operations now. Next question. Thank you for all you do. I've heard many times symbolism will be their downfall. So could you explain why this is? So is it mind control, magic, something else? Any insight is appreciated. And Alex says, yeah, it's magic. It's all magical symbology, magical programs, magical charms. They've been operating like this for thousands of years. They've been doing it right in front of us the whole time. It's just because we've been uneducated, and that's because they had control of the school systems. They dumbed everyone down so they could hide it, and hide it right in front of us, and so they could laugh in our faces because we didn't see any of it, and we didn't understand what was happening or how it was going. Of course. So, yes, it's all been magic, and basically, they're extremely arrogant. They have been extremely arrogant and condescending as well, which is why, if you read the Constitution, it's we the people. It's we the people. It's not we the government. He says, we have some responsibility in this. We abdicated the management locally to career politicians who then ran for state office and became career politicians and then went from state government to federal government to continue to be career politicians. And all along the way, they were bought by social interests to the point we are now. It says they're not for the people, they're for special interests. And that's where we lost it. It says that's where we lost control of our governments. We didn't have term limits. It says most places didn't have term limits. So they made a career out of it. It says Barack Obama and Michael Robinson, his wife, were worth $352,000 when he ran for Senate. He was in the Senate for 2 years. He says then ran for president. Then he was president for 8 years, and he's worth $81 million. And he laughs and he says, now, he says they're worth $81 million. It could be more because he was given an inheritance from Lolo Sataro when he passed away, but that money is in private accounts in Singapore. So he's probably worth more, but what we can trace is 81 million. For 10 years in politics. Wow. It says we do in fact have the best government money can buy. It says it's obvious, right? So you do with that what you will. And he laughs. And he's it's just funny because he says, glad this isn't going on YouTube because they would burn this to the ground. He says, we have lit the tires today. He says, I've lit the tires today. Well, it's going on YouTube through me. Okay. Next question. If you have any information to share about any other planet that has come through being slaves to the dark entities, can you share the experience they had to become fully into their sovereign selves? And he says, I have shared that in previous lectures and lectures going back years. He says the Procyon says were the last, and many of them are actually here. It says I don't know about many, but there's certainly a contingency here that is here to assist in any way they can. He says, and they're hanging out, wanting to help because they completely sympathize with whatever a situation is. But I've addressed that issue several times in the past. They needed assistance, but they were they needed assistance, but they were able to. The entire feminine principle of the Procyon race was suppressed. They had to go underground, and they literally were underground, and they were raising their children. He says predominantly the feminine principle underground and teaching them the old psychic ways. It says now the Greys in the Orion group were on the surface, and while they were busy with the men and some of the women on the surface, making them work and being slaves and just all that shit that they do and did, this group of young children underground were able to synchronize their consciousness and literally call for help. When you talked about like the feminine principle and doing the psychic old ways, it just reminded me of the movie Dune. If you've ever seen Dune, like the queen, the mother of the main character, she was in this certain female fraternity, and they all had these psychic abilities. So that just kind of reminded me of Dune. He says, this group of young children underground were able to synchronize their consciousness and literally call for help. They were able to project their consciousness through the nets that were on the planet in the atmosphere, through the psychological nets, frequency nets, out into space and call for help. He says, and it worked. They got an answer and help came. They came in to investigate what was going on, and when they saw who it was, they automatically knew. And I'm not perfectly clear if it was the Galactic Federation or Alliance, but nonetheless, they helped. And they're free, and they're here to help in some role, whatever task they're asked to do, to assist with us. And they're fervent, he says. They are. He says they're fervent. Can't pronounce that. Fervent? Fervent, which means they're passionate, basically. He says, listen, I'm going to just say this for myself and from the knowledge that I've been given by the A's. The Alderbaran group says we need to be extremely suspicious of, all right? And yes, I'm singling them out. He says the Alderbaran group, they flip-flop back and forth so much it's impossible to know which side they're really on. And it's for that reason that some of them have been asked to be or to leave because they simply cannot be counted on to take a stand. So this is me saying this. This is not anyone else in exopolitics. It says, but this is me saying this, and I have been suspicious from them from the get-go because they were involved with the Orion group. They were part of the Giza intelligence, which undermines humanity. They have done some shit off-world. They have been involved in the privatization and human trafficking of people, not only from Earth, but from other star systems. They have a lot of blood on their hands, he says, a lot. So I wanted to make that point clear. I would have mentioned it earlier, but I just didn't get to it. He says Michael Sala's sharing should be quite interesting, and I wouldn't at all be surprised if that name comes up. Okay. He was talking about Michael Sala. He did a session online about the religions, basically, and these other beings and Star Nation. So I didn't get to see that. I saw the little 10-minute clip on YouTube, so I kind of know all that stuff, so it's really interesting, but still, I'm sure they were in there somewhere. Next question, how does one individual act of kindness find its way into other dimensions? Meaning, if I do volunteer work or give to another in need, how do the higher beings experience that emotion and experience, if at all? And Alex says, I'll tell you what it does. And that's a wonderful question. And I'm so glad we did the last question because that's a wonderful question. He says, all of us are connected on multiple dimensions. Most of us come from very similar soul groups, but at some point we're all connected, not only to Source, but to each other. When you do an act of kindness to someone you don't know here, the fact that you're compelled to do an act of kindness means that there's an association, there's a spiritual connection to that individual, whether you know them or recognize them in this lifetime or not. So when you proceed with that act of kindness, it automatically connects that moment to higher dimensional realms, to his or her higher self or alternate selves, and to your higher self and alternate self in other dimensional planes. It connects, it creates a bridge, and what it does, that act of kindness pulls the frequency down from there, whether it's fourth, fifth, or sixth, whatever it is, it pulls those frequencies down and connects a link to your acts of kindness. It bridges that higher frequency to here and the now. It connects us to that higher ground, and every act of kindness that occurs is helping to raise the frequency of the planet. It's a moment of grace, a moment of grace, he says, and there is no stronger power than that. That moment of grace is a moment of love. It's a creation of love. It's a bonding of love. because it's empathy, it's compassion, and you're having it and you have no idea. Sometimes we have no idea how that can change someone's life or change their day. You just never know. That's how powerful we are. That's who we are. That's why we all agreed to this mission, because that's who we are. We're not scumbags. We came down here and incarnated into this race to get rid of the scumbags. It says, ladies and gentlemen, I know we do a question and answer next week, and anything can happen. It says anything can happen between now and then. It says stay strong, stay positive. Oh yeah, before, like when he says sharing acts of kindness, not only with people, but with animals, with other animals. Like I said, I've been feeding and trying to get to know a couple of stray cats outside my house. And my husband complains, and I'm like, but who else is going to take care of them? No one else is going to take care of them. Like, I have to do it. I have to take care of him, you know? And there was one time when we lived in Austin, and I was going to work, and there was a man on the side of the road, and he was always like, you know, he's homeless. He was begging for money, and I passed him every day. And I just felt so sorry for him. And I don't know, something just popped in my head, and it was like, what if he were Jesus? Like, or what if he was God? What if he was trying to do this just to see who would stop to help? And so one day I baked a bunch of chocolate chip cookies, put them in Ziplocs. It was around Christmas time. So I baked him cookies. I bought a $20 grocery card, a gift card. Um, yeah, and a few other things, and I put it in a Christmas stocking. And when I pulled up to the light where he was going to work one morning, I gave him that stocking. And for a while there, I didn't actually, after that, I didn't really see him again. So I don't know. Things like that pop in my head. I'm like, well, who's to say that's not some spirit seeing who will help? So just a thought. Anyway, he says, stay strong, stay positive. The old Boy Scout motto and Girl Scout motto, prepare for the worst, but always hope for the best. Do what you can to prepare, because once the takedown begins, he says it's going to get really interesting, and it's going to affect everything. He says, so you want to be sure that you have food, medicines, natural medicines too, first aid kits. He says extra water, water storage. He says get the things you can. You don't have to go way overboard, but do what you can. And I stress that because you may not be able to go to the food bank and get what you need because they may not be anything there. Also, pet food. If you have pets, get some backup food for them and keep it in a closet somewhere. It says so, and your network of friends, he says, stay in touch. Let's all keep communicating with each other. He says, we come out okay. He says, but we're gonna have to go through this stuff. We just do. And the takedown is literally around the corner. I hope they don't arrest Trump. I hope they don't try to assassinate Trump. He says, but these people are cornered. They're dangerous. And you know the crowd they've hung out with, the reptilian crowd. It says, not good energy. Not good energy. He says, not that all reptilians are dark and evil. They're not. But the crowd that managed and controlled this planet, they were feeding off of us for thousands of years, and they trained the rest of them to feed off of us as well. And that's why the human element, they don't have any respect for us. So yeah, if you watch the series V, it's all about the other race. They're reptilian under human skin. Yeah, it's all about that.
There are good ones in that series too. They're called the Fifth Column. Isn't there something about the Fifth Column with Q? Something. The Fifth Column were the rebellious reptilians, and they helped humanity against the Queen taking over. Interesting, huh? Why that show was canceled? Because it had too much truth to it. Yes. It says, so do not give them your power. Do not give them your power. Okay? It says the appropriate response is go fuck yourself. It says that's the appropriate response. He says, so now I've hung my ass out to dry. He says, we'll see you next Friday. Take care. God bless. Keep the faith, folks. Keep the faith. Okay? Okay. So that was a really good one. That was a great webinar. I hope you all got some information out of that. Please support Alex, JP, and James on alexcollier.org. You can go to Brighteon, BRIGHTEON.com. It's Alex Collier Official 2, and he does his live shows every Friday afternoon. I'm always working, so I never get a chance to be in on that, or I would. Anyway, but there's someone named Kat who asks questions in there. I've heard that. I'm like, that's not me. That's not me. I wish it was, but it's not. Anyway, I love all of you guys. Stay strong. It's coming. Fall's gonna be really intense. You know, I'm at a point where I just really I don't want to go to work anymore. I just don't want to be here. I'm really feeling out of body a lot of the times. Like, I just don't want to be here. So it's been really, really hard for me to keep going to work. And my hips are in pain today. But, yeah, fall's coming and I love fall. I hate that it's getting darker earlier. You know, by 8 o'clock, it's completely dark outside where we are now, and I hate it. I just hate it. I really hope they don't do the time change this year. They were supposed to get rid of it, but anyway. I love all of you. Thank you so much. If you like this, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you to all my new subscribers. I really appreciate you. You are my soul family. Just hang in there, guys. We're gonna get through this, and it's gonna be wonderful. If you have any questions, you can email me, my Gmail. I don't get in there every day. I get in there maybe every 2 or 3 weeks. So don't be offended if I don't get back to you right away, but I usually always get back to you, and I usually reply back on my comments on my BitChute or my YouTube. So I love all of you, my soul family. Thank you so much. And just continue to be that lighthouse, shining your bright light for those ships lost in that dark sea. And like my bracelet says, kind of like the Q, where we go one, we go all. So say we all. Okay? We're going to get through this. And I love you all so much. I'm going to give you all a great big hug. And we'll see you next week. Bye.